We've had many conversations about this in the last couple months. We were talking about tennis, we've talked about women's basketball, so this is not new.
It's not new, and here we are it's 2 or 3 weeks after a riveting Women's World Cup, and we're not talking about Spain's on-field performance, which we will today. But the reason we're having this discussion is a scandal, an explosive worldwide story happened. And what happened, for those who haven't really caught up to it, after Spain won the World Cup, Luis Rubiales, the head of the Spanish Federation, kissed Jenny Hermoso on the podium, an unwanted kiss. He disputes that. The rest of the world seems to think otherwise. So maybe you could just walk us through what happened in that moment and what has been the general response to it.
Yeah, I would love to. But to your earlier point, I think what is really important here and what is deeply upsetting, right, is that we are not talking about how dominant and unbelievable Spain was. So forgive me for one moment for letting this man take away this moment, which was extraordinary for this team. This is a Spanish team that has only been in the World Cup 3 times, right? Oh. Which means that we are starting off in a place where Spain is an underdog, right? We are looking at a debutante team, a new and building program that is built off what men's soccer football was in Spain. So for these women to put themselves together under scrutiny, because there was controversy going into the World Cup, and to put together the performance that they did is unbelievable. And so I think what's lost in all this, and what really upsets me, and is something I hear over and over again from the players, is that they didn't get that moment. It was truly robbed from them. Just the beautiful execution of soccer and doing something that is extraordinary. This was the toughest World Cup we've ever had, and they dominated. And all we want to talk about is one man and his inexcusable behavior. And Glennon Doyle posted something that I thought was beyond insightful, right? It's not that they are questioning, and they, I mean the patriarchal society. It's not that they are questioning that it happened. It's that they don't think anything is wrong with it. And I think that that is completely emblematic of the problem, right? It's the same thing we heard from the 99ers, which was the 1999 soccer team, which sort of blew the lid off women's soccer, not just in this country, but around the world. And it's this idea that you should just be grateful that you're here, right? You should just be grateful that we let you play soccer. You should be grateful that we give you these nice uniforms. You should be grateful that we give you sponsors, right? This is a whole ecosystem. This isn't just the federation.
Right. And as a follower of women's sports, and as somebody who's doing a documentary on the U.S. team and has talked to players repeatedly over the last month, is it frustrating? It strikes me from the outside and as an observer as being frustrating that women have to take on these burdens. So, for example, in the U.S. gymnastics sexual assault, Larry Nassar scandal, these are excellent athletes, and Simone Biles and others had this gold medal winning performance, and then we're dealing with this horrible, horrible sexual predatory case that dominated the news. The U.S. soccer team, that won in 2019, not only had to perform on the field, they had to withstand verbal haranguing from the President of the United States and had to sue their federation for equal pay. So they couldn't just shine in the athletic moment. And now we're talking about Spain, this team, as you mentioned, that has come out of nowhere, that represents this sea change in women's soccer where the U.S. was ahead of the game for so long. And then finally, the European men's superpowers, England, Spain, Germany, have caught up, have finally figured out, oh, this is worth investing in. Is this enough is enough? What has to change? Are we going to keep seeing this? What's going on here?
I think a lot about what Megan Rapinoe says, right? Of like, how much of a burden do we need to carry? And she and others have sort of talked a lot about this idea of double duty, right? We have to be outstanding on the field, and we also have to fight for what's right. Like, for generations, we've seen sports on the front line of progress. And I think women's sports has been one of these places where we've seen this, right? But unfortunately, the way that these systems are built is on these very patriarchal beliefs, right? Like, we see all of these federations that are run and built by men, right? And so when you don't necessarily have women at the seat of the table, it is much harder to climb to this place of equality, right? And so I think what we're seeing right now with Spain is emblematic of what has been happening in soccer for a very long time. We are always fighting for just this like little ounce. And Alex Morgan, she said, if Spain hadn't won, no one would be talking about this. And I think that that is so true. Think about what is happening with the Jamaica coach and the abuse allegations at the World Cup. Think about what is happening in these deeply, deeply misogynistic countries. And by the way, it's not just Spain. It's lots of them, right? Including on our home soil. So what we're seeing in front of the cameras is the tip of the iceberg.
And you mentioned talking to Alex and reaction. You know, I spoke to Sophia Smith recently for an upcoming project, and you know, Sophia Smith's a young U.S. phenom who had to deal with missing a penalty kick that would have propelled the United States into the quarterfinals, a heartbreaking moment. And you bring it up with her delicately, and has the right answer. She's like, this stinks. It's not what we wanted, but I want to inspire people by showing that we can bounce back from low moments. So she's not mad that it comes up. She's dealing with it head on, but she's also dealing with the reaction to this, and you have to ask her about it, right? And she said a lot of the same things that we've been talking about. But I'm interested in kind of digging a little deeper on the players you've talked to. You mentioned Alex Morgan. You've talked to other players for this upcoming project. What are the women soccer players, the athletes themselves, saying about this?
I mean, I think you saw it from so many of them right after. I mean, Tobin Heath was out there, Carly Lloyd was out there, Kristen Press was out there, Alex, Megan, Lindsay Horan, Rose Lavelle. Like, the parade of people that are standing with Jenny, I think really shows that they are not surprised, right? This is not a surprise from female athletes that this is sort of how this goes. I think that there is a deep, deep sadness that the Spain team was robbed of a celebration, and that in the moment that we should have been talking about every single one of them, the word that we are saying more than anything is Rubiales, right? And you brought up gymnastics before, and that's something that I think we all battled with as well, with like, why is Larry Nassar's name said all the time, but not necessarily the phenom gymnasts that swept Olympics after Olympics after Olympics. And I think that these players are binding together to form a sort of movement that is harder to break than one individual. And that's what I actually love about women's sports is they understand that this is larger than the game, right? They understand that your teammates sometimes, your enemies sometimes, but we are on one giant mission for equality, and that is always stronger as a unit.
Rubiales is getting, he's getting it from all corners. Can you see this guy ever coming back? I mean,
yes.
it's yes, and that's what I thought your question would be. And why?
I think Rubiales, and this is my opinion completely, that he firmly believes that he had the right to do what he did in front of millions of people to a woman who did not consent to it. Because he thought he is a position of power and he gives them the opportunity to put on this uniform, and whatever it is that he wants to do with them is his right. And I think that that is where this boils down, right? Oh, it's just a kiss. Oh, I was just excited. Oh, I'm the Federation president, right? These are all like, I think we saw it when he came to this press conference and we all expected him to resign. He was going to do the right thing. This is unacceptable. And he stands up there and he says, I will not resign. He does not think he did anything wrong.
Well, in that crazy moment of defiance, and maybe not that crazy because of the reasons you're talking about, that there's power hungry men running these sports federations. He talked about false feminism. What do you think he meant by that, and what's your response to that?
I think that there is this army of men, right? If you want to like go very big, Harvey Weinstein, right? If you want to take it in a very small, oh, I should be able to say something to women in a work environment, right? It doesn't matter if it's a microaggression or if it is a blatant rape, right? I think that there is this sense, right, that men can do whatever they want. They think that we are now living in this overly sensitive world, right? Where things that were okay for generations are now not okay because we are hypersensitive, not that they are doing something wrong, right? And so I think this is very misogynistic view that yeah, we're equal. We have all the things, but like, don't be so sensitive, right? Like, all I did was celebrate. Like, all I did was ask her if she wanted to come into a hotel room, you know, like, and so I deeply believe that people like this do think that women or the court of public opinion are at fault. God forbid they be at fault.
Yeah, and I got the sense rewatching, I can't believe I'm saying this, but rewatching the head of the Spanish Federation grabbing his crotch next to Spanish royalty, I got the sense it was almost to the coach, Jorge Vilda. Again, this is an opinion, but the message I took from that was, screw all the women and the Spanish players who wanted Vilda fired. We just won this thing. We just won the thing. We're right, they're wrong. And that was kind of this little crotch grab was like a F you, look what we did. Look what we did. And I think it's sparked by this mindset, the environment that we're supposedly in where everyone's too sensitive. And I'm sure that sense of we did it carried over to the victory ceremony where he's just like, we did it, I'm going to kiss you. Like, this is crazy, we're doing it. I don't know. That's an opinion as well.
You know what I keep thinking as you're talking about this? That like, it's locker room talk.
Yeah, right.
It's locker room talk. This is sports.
Which, to go outside society again, remember, how long ago was it now? 6 years ago? Almost 8 years ago? The locker room talk with Donald Trump. And
exactly.
The things he said about women, and he dismissed it as locker room talk. And we haven't, the world hasn't learned from that, it seems, over the last 8 years.
No, because I think when you think, even if you think about the World Cup, right? We made this like very strategic choice in our doc to say the World Cup, not the Women's World Cup. This is the World Cup.
2023 World Cup.
But women are always secondary in sports. Women's sports always hold a second candle space to men's, right? Even when we're talking about equal pay in 2019, which we did win, but only, I think, because we won the 2019 World Cup and we said, now you have to. Now you have to. We've won 4. The men's team has won 0. The men's team is like barely getting out of the group stage. There's no more argument for this, right? We've won 2 in a row. I think we still hold a secondary space to that, right? Because are you filling seats? Meanwhile, millions upon millions of people watched this World Cup this summer. We're getting higher numbers than we've ever seen. Look at what happened in the Final Four just recently, not the women's Final Four, in the Final Four, where we sold out seats and arenas that were predominantly held only for men. So I think we've seen over and over that if you give women an inch, we will take it and we will run with it, and we can fill stadiums and we can get big number sponsors and we can do all of these things. But because a lot of these patriarchal ecosystems still exist at the top, they still hold the power. And it's much, much harder to break through. And so that's where this double duty will always, well, hopefully not always, but will always be evident. I think people lost the plot on this World Cup. The U.S. women have held the torch for so long because thankfully we had Title IX, right? Thankfully we had the 99ers, right? European systems are now catching up because they have better infrastructures because of men's leagues, right? So it's very simple to create Manchester United women. It's very simple to create Chelsea women, right? Not the same way that we had to build our league from scratch here, right? But I think where we've lost the plot is that without the US team raging war on our federation right before a World Cup and then literally winning in the fashion that they did and winning equal pay has started a fire that is burning through these federations, that is burning through these Spanish women saying, you know what, they did it. I want to do it because I'm tired of dealing with these same issues over and over and over. And I think it gave everybody a little bit more courage that we can fight and we can win, and now we're coming for you. This is a new generation of soccer that I think is going to be wildly entertaining and fearless, right? And that's what we're seeing from Spain. That's what we saw from the US. That's what we saw out of Canada before the tournament started. I think that there's no longer this feeling of women's sports can just go along for the ride.
I think that's a great place to end it. Fearless. And we're going to see with this whole situation going on in Spain, I anticipate a fearless fight. I anticipate Rubiales eventually being pushed off the world stage and a better soccer world going forward. Maybe that's Pollyannish, but I hope that's what you can hope for. And
a safer one.
Yeah.
The women deserve it. They really, really do.